Welcome to the Westcity podcast. We hope you are encouraged by today's message. If you want to hear more podcasts, you can access them through the Westcity website found in the description link.
I just love the community purse and the idea of like helping out our local community and a global community. And I'm so glad we're actually partnering with Foxglove. I just think, God, can you imagine hearing the stories back of a whole village supported for life in regards to this initiative. I reckon it's brilliant. And just the great news the other week from Alex and Esther around Lombano as well. I just love it. And I'll talk a little bit more about that because we're actually starting a new series this week, and it's called Cultivate. And I've got a slide here I'll show you, Cultivate. And you'll see there's just four little symbols, Cultivate our time, our talents, our treasure, and our tenderness. Everyone say tenderness. It's compassion, but I thought, like T's. We just have T's all the way through. And it's not just cultivating time and talents and treasure and tenderness, but generosity in these areas. Neil wrote a little intro for this series. Can I read it to you? Is that okay? I'm going to read it anyway, but I just thought I'd ask. It's really good. Get ready. Listen to this. All right. If you hadn't had a coffee this morning, you might be feeling a bit tired, but just tune into these amazing words from someone who I put up there with Eugene Peterson. Here we go. It says, he says, there has probably never been a life lived as generously as Jesus of Nazareth. And everyone said? Everyone says you can't say Nazareth. Okay. From his first human day to the last, his heart and mind were captivated by the needs of others. As described in the famous hymn from Philippians 2, it says, he emptied himself of the status and privilege due him to experience human life in solidarity with the broken people he loved so much. That experience moved him to action time and time again. He accepted rejected people, tax collectors, prostitutes, and the like, and challenged his followers to cultivate the same generosity of spirit. He took the time to listen to children and to genuinely engage with others who would routinely be ignored or avoided by religious leaders. And he never left them as he found them. Jesus challenged them too, to be truly alive in God, to live deeper, generous lives. Accordingly, the new community we call church is to be known for cultivating this generous way of living and should be at the forefront of applauding such generosity whenever it occurs. And so over the next 4 weeks, we're going to unpack what it means to be generous in these 4 areas. And we came up with the word cultivate because I think being generous in our lives is not something we just have. Can we all agree on that? It just doesn't happen to you. You don't wake up one day and go, I'm a generous person. Wow, what happened last night? That was amazing. It's actually something we cultivate. It's got like that plant analogy, hasn't it? And I don't know about you, but I thought I'd use that. I went out this morning, I took a photo of these 3 plants. They're the same plant that I bought from Bunnings. I don't even know what they are, but I bought them because they look like they could survive in the desert. One of them hasn't done too well. The middle one's sort of like hanging in there. The one on the left is just going gangbusters. Now, when that one on the right started to die, I have one attack when it comes to plants, right? And it's this: water them more, right? If they're dying, you water them more. And so I began to water them more, and it didn't work. So people tell me, and maybe afterwards you could tell me what plant that is and what I need to do, because watering didn't work. So by the process of my powerful brain and elimination, I realized maybe it's something else. So I'm guessing maybe it's soil, or it could be shade, right? They're the 2 things or it could be like killer snails. I'm not sure, but what I realized is just throwing more water doesn't work. And sometimes when we're talking about generosity, whether that's our time, our talents, our treasure, or our tenderness, we just throwing stuff at it sometimes is not gonna work. Maybe we just make a stronger commitment. I'm going to be more generous, or listen to another message on generosity. But often we don't need more Sunday. We actually need more Monday to Saturday. We need a life lived out where we cultivate. What does it mean? So on Sunday, we're just going to sort of flash these things up, and we're just going to talk and look at Jesus' life and say, how was he generous? But it's really about digging around in the soil of our lives during the week and saying, how can I practice this? How can I put it in place that I think will produce the fruit? Does that make sense? And so in starting off, I want to do a disclaimer because we're going to actually look at a story, and hopefully I'll be able to tease out, I think, some things about how Jesus used his time in this story. And I'm going to make some points this morning. But before we do, I want to just look at a passage of scripture and just make a point. I actually was going to preach on this passage this morning, and I had a whole message and I dumped it. Some of you at the end of the second message I'm about to preach you might say, you should have stuck with the first one. I don't know. But I just felt like I need to go with this one because I felt like the whole series is about Jesus, right? And it's about, like it says in Philippians 2, have this same mind that Christ did. He emptied himself. He was generous. He gave his life away. He had time for people. He had time for kids. So I thought this message needs to be Christ-centered. It needs to be about him. And this is a Christ-centered verse, but I just want to make a point here. In Ephesians it says, be careful then how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, making the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. This is a first sentence about time, right? He's saying make the most of your time because the days are evil. And I used to read this and think, oh, that's a bummer. Like, I need to just, here we go again. I need to pray more. I need to read my Bible. No, I need, and they're not bad. Don't get me wrong. I should be doing those things. But we've just finished a series about being light in the world, the Sermon on the Mount. And the whole idea is that as we live for God as this new creation, we can overcome evil with good. That we can actually bring the God colors and God flavors into the world. And yet it says in Ephesians here, don't be unwise, but make the most of every opportunity. I used to read this like this. In your whole life, you need to do the following. Don't be drunk with wine, but be filled with the Spirit, and so forth. But I had an understanding as I read this and I studied it this week. That thing there where it says, make the most of every opportunity, it actually means make the most of the season you're in. This is not a message this morning about you have 24 hours a day, 1,378 minutes. I don't know, I just made that up. But you have certain amount, and you should be singing and praising the Lord, and like all day. You need to get this passage. It says, make the most of the season you're in. So here's the thing. If you're a mum with young kids, you have a certain amount of time that's filled up. Amen? With like, it's basically those two things. You aren't going to be able to go running around, doing lots of other stuff. But Paul is saying here to the church in Ephesus and us, he's saying, make the most of time of the season you have. If you're a young mum with young kids, make the most of it. Maybe there's some little things you can do that will actually connect you with God and fill you with his life and also cause you to be a blessing to others. You might be single. You might be single again. You've been married and maybe for whatever reason you found that you split ways with your spouse, your other half, and you're single again. You might be a retiree. How many of us know? You might be an empty nester like me and Caroline. We love it. We still have kids at home and they still make a mess, but they're kind of like, we don't have to feed them and all that stuff. It's so beautiful. Just go, children, go, be gone. All those seasons allow you different amounts of time. And we're going to look at a passage where Jesus was in a season. It was a season of ministry and it's a season of time. But we're going to hopefully tease some stuff out around what things Jesus did that could speak to us. And so we're going to read, and I'm just going to break that passage up. I'll read a little bit, and then I want to make an observation, if that's okay. But does that sort of liberate you a bit? What season are you in? Make the most of it. I love that. That's good, hey? Should we just finish at that? We've only got 3 minutes left anyway, so here we go. So we're looking at generosity of time, how we live our time. And I'm going to read to you from Mark chapter 5, and we're going to read from 21 to 43. This is a story about how Jesus heals a woman and Jairus' daughter. Verse 21 we'll read from. When Jesus had again crossed over by boat to the other side by the lake, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the lake. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. He pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." So Jesus went with him. We know in Luke, the whole of Luke is about Jesus heading to Jerusalem. Jesus heading to this showdown and ultimately the cross. So we knew Jesus had a purpose. But the thing that I noticed here, it was that Jesus is actually going about life, and a man comes to him and says, "My daughter is dying, please help her." And it says Jesus went with him. I think being generous with your time looks like being willing to turn aside. Being willing to turn aside. You see, I don't know about you, but if you've ever tried to plan generosity or plan kind of anything to do with living a life for Jesus, often the opportunities never arise when we're ready to do them. Have you found that? They always come at the wrong time. The time when you're kind of like going somewhere else. I'm going to Jerusalem because I'm going to die for the world and rise again. And yet this guy comes along and it says Jesus went, "Sure, I'll come with you." I was driving home from the gym a few weeks ago, and when we've been practicing this, surprise the world kind of stuff, and, just living, generously and kind of like, I was literally I live 900, my gym is 900 meters. I live 900 meters from my home. What? My gym is 900 meters from our house. And I was driving up the hill, and there was this lady staggering on the road, and she started waving me down. And so I slowed down, and I wound the window down a little bit on the passenger side. It's like, "Hello." She's like, "Oh, hey, love, how you doing?" She said, "I'm going to my friend's. Do you know where this street is?" She said, "I'm a bit drunk and I'm a bit lost." And she said, "I just got off the bus." And I was like, I like that honesty. And so I said, "Hang on a minute," and just left the window up. Yeah. And then looked on my phone. It was literally about 200-300 meters down the road. And I started trying to tell her where it was, and she was like, "Oh, which way, love?" And she was she wasn't from England, that's just my accent coming out. And I just said, "Oh, look, just get in and I'll take you there, if that's okay." She said, "Oh, yeah." So she got in and we started driving down the thing, and she's just so thankful. She's like, "Thank you so much." Now, I was freaking out because weird stuff has happened when I've done that before, and it wasn't really something I'm comfortable with, and wasn't actually, to be honest, wasn't on the way home. It was the other way. So but something happened on the way there. She actually turned to me. She's like, "I'm so thankful, thank you. I'm really not sort of great. I don't know where I'm going, so I'm a bit, drunk." She turned to me and she said, "Are you an angel?" And I was like, "Oh." Remember, she was drunk, all right? And she had glasses, so I'm thinking maybe. But I said, no. And then she sort of like looks sort of up to the left of the window, and she just like, not talking to me anymore, she just says, "Thank you, God. Thank you, God." And I'm like, whoa. And then I drop her off. She gets out. She's like, "Thank you, love." And I'm trying to say, "God bless you," or something, Christian. Too late. She's gone. And but I tell you what, she actually blessed me. And it all began because I was willing to turn aside. When we look at the story of the Good Samaritan, it's the neighbor who kind of sees the need and stops, right? And turns aside. That's where it all begins. So when we think about this, knowing the season we're in, what would it look like to be ready to turn aside, to be interrupted by God? Maybe that's something we could think about, because it's something Jesus modeled. He'd leave crowds and go and talk to just a child or a woman at a well. Let's read on. A large crowd followed and pressed around him, so he's on the way to Jairus' house, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought, "If I just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Immediately her bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was freed from her suffering. At once Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" Maybe being generous with our time looks like being touched by the needs of others. My friend Reza, who comes from Persia, showed me a video the other day, and it was of this Muslim man and another guy dressed up in a burqa and pulled up alongside, and it's this young dude playing jokes on his father. And so he got his mate to dress up, and she started touching him through the car window and door. And he was like, freaking out because, male men don't touch female women in the culture there. And in this passage here, we have a whole bunch of stuff going on. This woman has an issue of blood. Work out what that means. She is basically, according to the law, unclean. And she comes and touches a man. She says, "If I can just touch the garment." And when Jesus finds out, he mentions neither of those two things. He just recognizes that power has gone from him. And it starts because I think Jesus constantly was willing to see and hear people who came in all sorts of packages and ways and see their need and be touched by it. We're going to take up our community purse offering in 2 weeks' time, like on the 23rd and 30th, the last 2 weeks of this month. Do you know how the community purse came about? Ever since I was a young Christian, I always dreamed about when the offering went round, what if you're in need, you could actually take money out of the offering? You see, because I was in church where I'd hear a lot about, give, if you give, you're blessed and all that. And I used to think, that's cool, awesome. But wouldn't it be great if you were in need, you could actually take money out? And then I met a guy who went to a church in Lithuania somewhere. And he said, that's what we used to do. We had a big bowl at the back. And one was for the giving and the other was to share. And people would just come and take money out. And I was like, what if people stole it? And he was like, he goes, Judas was a treasurer. Jesus knew it. I guess he wasn't that bothered either. He was kind of like, good point. Yeah. They kind of just, and he said, the funny thing is people didn't. And people gave. Well, as we as a community started to get into our community and meet need, we realized it was too much for individual people. Sometimes you can help your friend, right? Or a friend of a friend. But sometimes the need is so big, you can't carry it alone. And so we said, look, why don't we actually once a year all chuck some money in a bag and have that for two things. One, for people within our community or friends of friends, like Facebook, friends of friends, who we're walking with, that it's too much for us to just help. It's more than the $50 or $60 to help that crisis, financial crisis. Let's have money there that you can come and approach and we can help together. We looked at the book of Acts, and in the book of Acts, it says they loved one another and they did a few things. It said they shared what they had. It said they met together. And it said that no one was in need. And we thought that would be a great thing if we could actually live in a way where there wasn't any need. The other thing obviously we do now is we want to help with community development, things further afield. And so I think it's beautiful because it all began by just being touched by need. It's just saying, hey, this is a practical way that we can actually meet a need. It's not the whole church, but it's part of what makes us church. I love that. I don't want to come to a church where it's just Sunday and we sing a few songs and we hear a motivational message. I want to live as a church. I want to be an alternative community to the world and a caring community for the world. I really do, and I think we can. I take that seriously. I'm stuck with you, and you are stuck with me. And that's why I'm going to throw my money in behind this each year. Because I don't want to ever turn aside from need. I know it's hard. I want to turn the channel, and I want to be comfortable. But Jesus didn't come to make me comfortable. He came to comfort me, but not make me comfortable. It just goes on, and I'll finish with this. These are the 17 points. It says, they said to him, he said, who touched me? And they said, you see the people crowding against you, his disciples answered, and yet you answer, and yet you can ask, who touched me? But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet and trembled with fear and told them the whole truth. He said to her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be freed from your suffering. Maybe being generous with your time will mean speaking words of peace to those that need it. I just thought to myself, it's so good sometimes just to, have you ever just felt, I wonder how that person's doing? Maybe it's gone. Just saying, speak words of peace, to text to someone. A word. This woman, he could have said, you shouldn't have touched me, and you've got an issue of blood, you're unclean. He said, neither are these. He said, woman, go in peace. Your faith has healed you. What would it be to use our time to speak peace to people and blessing? Maybe that's something you can do. You say, well, I'm a mum, I've got 17 children, all under the age of 2. I say, well, that's amazing. Maybe you can speak peace to someone, maybe to your kids. And you definitely need someone speaking peace to you as well. Coming away from the gym another time, literally last week, I saw a guy drop his wallet, and he was with his kid. Next to the gym is a play center, and he drove off. So I picked his wallet up. I took the $300 out. Now, I had a look at his driver's license, and it was not too far away, so I thought, I'll go to his house and drop it off. I did. I got there, and he wasn't home. Probably driving around frantically looking for his wallet. His wife was there, and on the way there, I thought to myself, I do definitely want to say something like, the Lord be with you, or God bless you, or Jesus smiles upon you, or something, So I got to the door already with my, my verbal gun loaded, and this lovely lady came out, and I said, I was hiding at first. So I was like, is your husband so-and-so, or does so-and-so live here? And she said, yeah. I said, he dropped his wallet. Pull it out, give it to her. Straight away she says, God bless you. And I was like, and he to you also. And walked off. I couldn't believe it. She got him before me. Mongrel. While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. He said, "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" Overhearing what they said, Jesus told him, "Don't be afraid, just believe." Being generous with your time maybe mean you don't live with fear that you're going to miss opportunities. You know, when you turn aside and you think, "I should have been doing that." You see, he got to a point where it was like this woman had waylaid him and he spoke peace to her, and then news came, "Your daughter is dead. You should have been quicker." And often when it comes to being generous with our time, we're always thinking about what this is going to do to stuff us up later on. We always think about, if I don't get to it now, the tyranny of the urgent. If I don't get to it now, it's never going to happen. I've found actually that I'm less in control of life than I thought I was. Weird, eh? I know. It kind of mostly happens to me. And Jesus said, "Hey, it's okay. Look, maybe you think there's not going to be enough hours in the day, but what would it be like to trust the God who made the day? That he would be far more, able to do far more abundantly than you could imagine a thing. What would it be like to live like that? To go, I know there's only this amount of time, and fear brings up that I'm going to miss out on stuff and I need to do stuff, but to then say, God made this day. He's the Lord of this day. I think he can work things out. Time won't permit me to tell you the amount of stories I've been like, I can't be doing this with this person. I need to be leading lots of leaders because that's what leaders do. And in the midst of this, I meet Jesus. And Jesus ministers to me. Not I'm the Jesus that ministers to them, but I'm ministered to by Jesus. And I grow as a Christian because somehow I've been able to let go of the fact that, you know, the tyranny of the urgent, and that time, I have to control it. Often when you want to be generous with your time, you need to just let things go a bit more. And, you know, we say it, let go and let God. I know it sounds cheesy, but I think sometimes there's powerful things about it. So they said, she's dead. And he told them, don't be afraid, just believe. I'm landing with my message. Guys, don't play it again. So he did not let anyone follow him except Peter, James, and John, and the brother of James. And when they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw a commotion with people crying and wailing loudly, as you would. She's died. He went in and said to them, "Why all this commotion and wailing?" Thought it'd be a bit obvious, Jesus, but anyway. He goes on to say, "The child is not dead but asleep." But they laughed at him. It's funny how Jesus sees things different to us. We see death, he sees sleep. I think that's because he's able to raise the dead, right? But they laughed at him. That's so weird, hey? They laughed at Jesus. I guess it's understandable. And after he put them all out, he took the child's father and mother and the disciples who were with him and went in where the child was. Maybe being generous with your time means that you have to put out the laughers and the naysayers. You know, I don't know about you, but I've had people say to me, "Why are you bothering with them?" Has anyone else had that? They're no-hopers. They're rubbish. They're terrible. You know, you're wasting your time. I've said it to myself. I've got a little guy lives in my head, and he sort of says that to me all the time. "Why are you doing this? They're losers. They're no-hopers. They're going to just take it and take and take and take." And some people do. But sometimes you just maybe have to throw them out the door. Jesus actually took the people who were laughing and he threw them out the door. I don't know who's left your life. I don't know who's walked out, who maybe was the one who was laughing and the naysayer. But I tell you what, it doesn't matter who's left, because if you've got Jesus in the room, that's all you need. And so I just think sometimes I've got to shut out the words of those who say don't. I could tell you a story of a young guy, Jaden Bray. Every year I go with him to Pinaroo, and we go in front of his mum's grave and we sit there for a while. And Jaden became a Christian because in our old church we went and just helped people and renovated some of their houses when we found out they were in need, and we just go around. Big army of us, church mob. It was like a barn raising. It was like, "Ah!" And so there's everyone. And Danielle Lobo, Daniel and Brendan, was like coordinating us. And there was this young boy next door, and it was Jaden. He was watching, and she grabbed him and brought him over. And Jaden was living with his uncle at the time, and he became a follower of Jesus. And you know, that young man has gone on to do amazing things, all because Danielle just kind of went over there. And maybe she could have said to herself, this guy hardly even looks at anyone in the face. He had grown his hair so long. I remember going back to the school where we did an appreciation day for teachers, and the teachers recognized Jaden, hair back, having conversation, looking at me. I remember the teacher saying to me, saying to Jaden, Jaden, you never used to look anyone in the eye. You never used to talk to anyone. And he was like, yeah, miss, I know. It's good, eh? And I just think, that's Jesus, hey? So don't listen to those voices and the naysayers. Finally, he took her by the hand and said, so they're all shut out, and he took her by the hand and said to her, Talitha cum, which means, little girl, I say to you, get up. Immediately the girl stood up and began to walk around, and she was 12 years old. At this, they were completely astonished. And Jesus gave strict orders not to let anyone know, as if that was going to work, and told them to give her something to eat. See, I can imagine being all the people who got kicked out. They're stood at the door, and they can hear the footsteps of adults walking around, and then all of a sudden they hear the footsteps of a kid who had died. They'd missed out on being in that place, but they could hear it anyway. And I just think, what a beautiful picture. Maybe being generous with our time, and I'll finish with this. It's just about saying, how can I leave people better off than I found them? Which is what Chiz said in his intro, his beautiful intro that he wrote. How can I use my time to leave people better off than I found them? That's what Jesus did. So hopefully somewhere in that 84 points, something spoke to you. This week, hold on to it. Be ready for some interruptions. Keep your eyes open. But also, don't beat yourself up, because you're in a season. Whatever season you're in, know God loves you. He's with you. And he's going to fill you to be a blessing to others. Thanks, Chiz.
Each week at West City, we are sent out to be the church in the world. We do this by declaring the following benediction. May you know God's enabling as you join us in living it out. We come together as the church to be reminded of the go of Christ. So go and feed the hungry. Go and clothe the naked. Go and fight for justice. Go and end oppression. Go and proclaim anew the old story. Go and reach those who are running from God and God's church. Go and associate with those who don't look like us, think like us, act like us, or even like us. And do it all in the name of the one who sent us. His name is Jesus.